Yeah, I'll always be a metalhead. Nothing can take that away from me.
Right.
I mean, not jail, not people, not religion, not anything. I'll always be a metalhead. Metalhead leads you all life.
You're listening to the Great Metal Debate Podcast.
Welcome back, metalheads, to another episode of the Great Metal Debate Podcast. It's Xander again, and today we are going to be talking about the Finnish goregrind band Torsofuck and their brand new album, Postpartum Exstasy. Please note that this is the band's first album in 19 years. In the year 2004, I was between the ages of 12 and 13 years old. At this time in my life, the heaviest bands that I knew of were Slipknot, Lamb of God, Hatebreed, Killswitch Engage, Fall and Atreyu. Little did young Xander know, one of the most brutal bands of all time had released their debut album titled Erotic Diarrhea Fantasies. It wouldn't be until many years later, when I was either 19 or 20, when I discovered the infamous song Raped by Elephants. Even if you are not familiar with the underground genre of goregrind, there is a good chance that you have been sent the link at least once by another metalhead friend on Facebook. Or maybe you've stumbled upon this side link to another brutal death slam song on YouTube. Or perhaps maybe you might have heard Austin Dickey from The Dickey Dine Show reference the song Mutilated for Sexual Purposes in a recent episode. Either way, Torsofuck is a band that is well known among the underground metal fans, despite most people having an incredibly divisive opinion about the group. In fact, I'm willing to bet that most people have very mixed feelings about the band's playing or their vocal style. We all seem to have that sort of love-hate relationship with Torsofuck, mainly due to the first half of most of their songs being sound clips from either real porn flicks or some B-horror film. If the sound clips weren't so long, we would probably get into the music itself. This is evident in the new album title track, Postpartum Exstasy, and the way that it was way too much like their song Pussy Mutilation from their first album. Both tracks have the majority of it being the movie clip filler. The only difference is that instead of the whole blood-sucking freaks intro, instead you hear someone screaming in anguish for the first 2 minutes of the 4.5-minute runtime. I guess I'm just slightly annoyed that, in almost 20 years, the band hasn't seemed to improve much. Self-dismemberment does the exact same thing. The band Mortician seems to have a similar issue, especially with their older albums, yet more people have heard of and are fans of Mortician, and they are well respected in the scene. Torsofuck have their own form of street cred, but it's probably not as well received by most metal fans. I will say that the song The Pig is probably my favorite song on the album, mainly because it has one of the shorter intros at only 28 seconds out of the 5-minute track. It's good to have a song that is less bullshit and more business. Animal Lover only has an 18-second intro, but it's a much shorter song. This is definitely not the type of music you listen to around other people. I couldn't imagine all my friends together at a metal party having to stand around uncomfortably gripping our beer for the first minute and a half of Molested with a Festering Stump. Let's just admit how awkward it would be to have to listen to some deranged guy jacking off. Despite the vocalist Mikko Freeberg being an absolute monster when it comes to his capabilities of sounding like a creature, every live video I have seen doesn't seem to show him projecting his voice loud enough to stand out among the rest of the instruments. This reminds me of how Visceral Disgorge is live. The vocals are too quiet outside of the studio mixing. Let's talk about the musicians. If you're looking for groovy guitar riffs or solos or any type of song structure outside of downtuned chugs, you won't find it here. Torsofuck has always been the type of band that is very simplistic in their nature, and they aren't about being musicians. They are about being heavy and gross. If you are looking for something loud, purposely offensive, and obnoxious, you found it. This has always been the main goal of the band. Sure, I may have always enjoyed the fart noise style of vocals because they are just so over the top, but it has always been good only in moderation. The same can be said for other bands who were clearly influenced by Torsofuck's iconic debut. You know what the problem is with this record? It's 15 years too late. Maybe if this album had come out in 2008, they could have played some of the new tracks like Necropervert or Retarded Anal Whore during the band's final live show in 2009 before they split up for the third time. But ever since the late 2000s, there have been an influx of bands who wanted to be just as brutal, if not more brutal, than their heroes. So now that 19 years have passed and Torsofuck has just now put out their long-awaited second album, it just feels like it's doomed to get lost in the shuffle of every other goregrind band out there, which is honestly a damn shame. I know it sounds like I have been taking a massive shit on this group, but the truth is that I actually respect them for being late rather than never, unlike Vital Remains and Necrophagist, who both haven't released new albums since 2007. I would be lucky to see them drop a new record within my lifetime. If this review sounds more like a long-winded rant, that's because it is. Each song on this new album just sounds like the same structure that they used in every song on the previous album. That is both a good and bad thing. It's bad because it's repetitious, but good because Mikko hasn't lost his vocal capabilities over the years, unlike Antti Bowman from Demolish, which is another brutal band from Finland, who hasn't put out an album in 30 years. All things considered, it simply wouldn't be fair for me to give this album a rating. All I can really do is admit that I had a few laughs with the somewhat comical sound clips, and I made a few sour faces because of the gnarly vocals. But I will go on record to say that the debut is slightly superior. There is a reason I mentioned this band in my review for the Dark Prison Massacre last year. They are comparable due to the Creature-esque vocal similarities. So if you enjoy metal that is closely related to the noise genre, then this will be directly up your alley. But if you want something with a little more heart and soul put into the music and lyrics, then you can find it in the many other subgenres that metal has to offer. Just so we are clear, I would still like to see these guys play live one day, and maybe I'll eventually head on over to Fat Tub of Lard Records, or maybe even Brutal Mind, to buy one of their shirts. That's probably the best way to support these guys aside from buying their music on Bandcamp.